Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, an inspired conversation space between Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner on the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness.
We keep our conversations honest, our experiences real, and our philosophies exploratory. We believe that in order to raise incredible humans, we first have to raise ourselves. We know that in order to rock the family, you've got to nourish the mother. If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively, head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper. And for all live-streamed pre-release podcasts and all our free content, head over to our free Facebook group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today we are joined by a very special guest as part of our Relationship Taboos series. And today we will be talking with Rachel McKenzie on the concept of infidelity and healing and forging relationship beyond the experience of infidelity. So it's a deep and rich, and we hope so heart wholesome, grounded conversation that you take the richness out of it for yourself, your own well-being, and the well-being of your relationship. So before we jump into that conversation, which will be divine, I would love to remind you to jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au, scroll on down to the red banner, fill in your email address, and we will send you off an email every once in a while so you don't miss a beat. And you have links and a click away from everything you need. So nourishingthemother.com.au. So we are joined by the divine Rachel McKenzie. I'm just going to read you her beautifully succinct bio and then we'll say hello to her. So Rachel McKenzie provides supportive mentorship and empathetic conversations for women navigating the heartbreak of infidelity. Welcome, Rachel.
It just so beautifully captures it, doesn't it?
Oh, Lord. Makes my heart sing. Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for jumping on and being so courageous and willing to share really deeply and vulnerably. Like, none of us take that lightly. It's really profound. So thank you.
Thank you.
We would love for you to begin with however lands for you in this particular moment, the story arc of your experience, so that our listeners just have a grounding on how they find themselves in the experience that you had.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if you don't know someone with a story like this, you might have experienced it yourself, or you'll come across it in friendships that you might have. I was in a partnership with a beautiful man. We've been together for 16 years. We've had 2 children together. Very beautiful life together. Very ambitious myself, and was very secure in the life I had with him and the life that I had built around us for our family. And one day over breakfast, he walked in and he just had the most unusual look on his face. And he told me that he needed to talk to me about something. And he looked so odd that I thought something had happened in his family, that maybe there'd been a sudden death or an accident. And I braced myself for that news. But he said that he had been unfaithful. And he started to sob and apologize and I think I went into a state of shock, trying to understand and comprehend what he was sharing. And then from there, it just grew bigger and bigger over the weeks. The one event turned into more events, and the time frame grew longer. So up to 18 months of our life, infidelity had been part of our relationship without me having any idea. And along with that was this deep depression that it welled inside, that again I just hadn't recognized. And by that stage, we were both in very different deep pools of hurt. Him starting a lot further along the line because he was aware the whole time, and me stuck right back at the beginning. And then from there, we both went on quite a individual journey. I didn't get quite what I needed at all to feel trust with him. So though we tried a few different things, I came to the conclusion that that we had to separate because his language was that he was incredibly sorry. He didn't know why he had done it, but that he promised not to do it again. And it just felt like the most ridiculous promise that you can make to someone. And so we separated for 9 months and both did individual work, building ourselves back together again, and then reunited at the end, which was actually quite unexpected. So, yeah, that was my experience of the sudden impact of infidelity without having any idea at all that was part of our relationship for such a long time.
I really hear the heaviness in your voice just recounting it, and it is that depiction of being blindsided. It's just what I keep what keeps coming up for me in your words is, you know, you say that you'd had this beautiful history together and 2 children and, you know, a very clear life path in your view, and then this happens out of the blue. What was that? What was that like in your body when his words landed?
I'd use the word shattering, you know, something that you can't quickly gather back up and put back together, and it having so many pieces to it that it takes you so long to even figure out where all the bits have gone. It is information like that is like it's like a relationship grenade. Yeah.
And I also imagine a complete shattering of your own identity and who you thought you were perhaps in relationship.
Oh, I had that quite well developed in myself to begin with, but it had been a long time. Like I'd lost my sea legs, so to speak. You know, we'd been in a relationship for a long time, and that had been both of our identities. So to suddenly be relying on myself alone again, it took a little bit, not too long because I'd done the work, but it took a little bit to get back on my feet and feel comfortable again, for sure.
I have so many questions. I guess what I'm fascinated by initially is when you came to the conclusion that he wasn't meeting you and you were separating. Did you think at that point in time you were working towards uncoupling or coupling?
Yeah, so the confusing thing during all of this is that we were still a very good team.
In terms of
parenting. We still had the same, and even supporting each other in hurt, which was beautiful, but also incredibly complicated because the timing of this was through COVID. So we couldn't financially separate our homes anyway. We have a farm we really love living on, and that had been very important to us to raise our children on property. And there was room for the two of us, So we were trying desperately to make it work, because on top of COVID, we are both from New Zealand and we were completely cut off from our family. So we didn't have homes, original homes and family units to go back to. So we really were each other's support, even though at different points we were the last people we wanted to see. Me separating for him was an ultimate betrayal. He felt he had been honest, and I had then taken that honesty and not handled it well enough for him, and separated and broken up our family. And for him, that I think that must have felt as betraying as him being unfaithful to me.
Wow. How do you let yourself be held by the man who, at this point in time, you perceive is hurting you the most?
I couldn't let him touch me. Yeah, that was established very early, that I needed a bedroom where I could shut a door that he wouldn't come up to. So we had different floors of the house, and he actually built a separate bedroom in the home to be in. So I found that very respectful, that he was able to respect my space. But yeah, in terms of physical comfort, I absolutely couldn't. That boundary was established very early on.
What about in terms of emotional comfort? So when you say we were holding each other through the hurt and the pain at the same time as being the cause, essentially, of each other's hurt and pain, how do you do that?
That is stepping in and caring for our children when one of us needs to cry and break down, and that's bringing in the washing and asking the person that has hurt you, have we got enough for school lunches in the morning? It's that kind of support. It's how you would support a good friend. And I think we defaulted to supporting each other as the parents we were for our children.
Could you see that would be less functional for other people?
Yeah, I think infidelity has no real book to it, and there's no right or wrong. There's no, in terms of trying to move forward with a relationship, whether that is being close to each other and supporting each other. And look, that wasn't by choice, that was by circumstance. It absolutely played in our favor later on. But I think at the beginning, given the choice, we most likely would have been physically in different homes. And even moving past infidelity with couples as well, that the healthiest option might look like you never get back together. It's more about how you move forward together with this theme, and then what your life looks like after it. And if you have children together, you will still have a life together regardless of whether you're in relationship or not. We are always in relationship to each other regardless when you have children. So even if one of you is not at all present, there's still a parent of your child. So very complicated, and I cast no judgment to the way any couple handles and moves forward with infidelity.
So at this point in time where you're living on separate floors and you've put very clear boundaries around physical intimacy, and you're doing your best to support each other's need for emotional space and to look after and caretake for your children, do you perceive at that point in time that you are done, that you're exiting? Or is there something still here worth saving?
It is so confusing. It is so confusing because the person in front of me and what he has done is unrecognizable. So it is so confusing.
Mm. Can you expand that out a little bit about what that feels like in your head?
I think when you're in a relationship together, there is kind of basic surface rules, social rules of what seems to be relationship and the examples we have around us. And then there's a lot of unspoken rules that are the dynamics between two individual people. And the type of person that he was for me to be in partnership with would have never behaved the way he had. And that came as such a shock. And so the confusing part is that you've got this sudden new information about one theme, infidelity, but then you've also got a whole pile of information about where that has come from. You're still trying to catch up. Like, how did we get here? How did you get here? How did it go on so long? How did you juggle both lives at the same time? How could you cope with the stress and the guilt and still help me make dinner? Like, it's this person has developed a skill set that you didn't even think they were capable of. So they truly do become unrecognizable. You have to learn new depth to a person that you might have spent a significant amount of your life with, that you suddenly realize you didn't know everything about.
How do you do that?
Day by day. Day by day.
What does that
You
look
ask
like?
for a lot of support. That looks like being understanding and empathetic in the morning and wanting to poke his eyes out by the afternoon. That's what it looks like. It is a roller coaster it's like the stages of grief all jumbled up, because there's no predictable way it will go. If you have really supportive friends who are vulnerable with you and maybe share their own stories, every single one is different to each other. There's no handbook. Yeah, it's just a roller coaster.
What does it mean to learn new depths of the person in front of you, the person you've loved?
It's learning new depths of them, but also realizing how you've only seen them in one way. It's like your perspective gets wider all of a sudden and you realize you've only been seeing this person in one light, which means you've only been seeing yourself in one light.
Mm.
And then realizing that the two of you are actually much broader people than you thought you were.
Well, that is a profound spiritual truth. Bridgie, did you want to say something?
I'm just because that's really, I think that's a point that we should labor on, because you said, he showed you a side of himself almost that you'd never ever seen before. But was he always that, or was it always a part of him that was that had those characteristics, but through the lens that you saw him, you were only able to see it, that, like, and Julie and I talk about this often. Like, we think that we deeply know this person that we are spending our lives with, but we still only see the parts of them that we're able to see that reflected us essentially. Like, which is just a profound reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you suddenly realize that about yourself. You go, the meanness that would come out of my mouth sometimes would frighten me. I would listen to myself and think, oh God, how can I say something like that? And it's just bubbling from somewhere of pure hurt and rage. And so you go, I don't really know myself that well either. I'm also capable of all these other behaviors as well. And it's really mind-blowing.
To stay, I mean, what I hear you share here, to stay in that rawness of confronting, the lived experience of infidelity in the mirror of this person who has, you know, in your view, like done this to you, you're not only having to look at him, but you're also having to look at the parts of you that you can't repress in response to seeing him. Like,
yeah,
the pain of both seeing him and then parts of you that you didn't think you were, right? Like, you'll be busting illusions about yourself at the same time as trying to pick up all the pieces of what you thought your relationship was. I mean, like, that is just, you know, talk about like a dark night of the soul, right?
It's long and it's lonely, and you realize that your hurt is your hurt, and you are never going to get the sentence that you desperately crave, that the person truly gets it. When you're hurt like that, all you want to hear is that the person truly understands the way in which they've hurt you, and you never get it. Just like you will never give the sentence they need to them either. It's sitting in your own hurt. And this is hurt from, you know, this is each of our own special recipe of hurt right from when we were children. They're our own to carry, and to have you both in full distress at the same time is incredibly hard. And kids and life, and it's really, really hard.
Do you perceive a link between the woundedness that or the hurt that you feel in this moment and the stacking of hurts from childhood? Do you see a thread or a link with those hurts?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we got to the point where we realized that we were perfectly matched for hurting each other in just the right way. Yeah.
For what reason?
We're perfectly matched for loving each other, and we're perfectly matched for hurting each other. Based
on your wounds that are attracting that dynamic. Yeah, the panacea.
And we make whole movies and songs and ads about that beautiful love part of matching each other, and nobody wants to watch the movie where you just hurt each other perfectly.
Yeah, perfect matching wounds.
Yeah.
So was there a part of you that looked at what role have I played in this experience?
That was a sobering
I said that so tentatively because I'm like, ouch. It was the ouchiest comment.
It isn't.
It was painful.
So
because, yeah, how intoxicating is the storyline of, oh, look what he's done to me. It is such a gloriously intoxicating spot to stay in. And I have spoken to women who have not been able to get out of that, who have continued on for decades into their lives of staying in that spot of, he did this to me and I have never recovered. And that those comments scared me enough to be very reflective. And he was trying so hard and sharing so much vulnerability and work that he was doing for himself, that I then did, you know, that's what we were sharing together. So I was also doing the same work, and yeah. So it's actually quite hard to talk about. It's like opening up boxes that you didn't think belonged to you, and holding them, what's in the box, both out for each other to see, and it's not very nice. It's a bit gross, and it's like, I'll show you yours if you show me mine, and it's just icky. It's not attractive. They're not attractive qualities of your partner. They're not attractive qualities of yourself. And it's very sobering to look at that and go, oh, I've been flinging this everywhere, and I've been hitting you with this plenty of times, just like you've been hitting me with yours.
I guess what I'm after is a little bit more on, were you how did you make the leap from he's done it to me to a level of self-responsibility and seeing this is a co-creation and here's my role in it?
Guidance. We had good support helping us see that. But then if you have someone sitting across from you saying, here's where I feel this has affected you, of course you then feel comfortable enough to say the same back. That's just how those conversations go. I mean, they don't have to go that way, but those were the conversations that we were having. So just peeling all those layers off and sharing that with each other, and not having isn't it so great we're going to get back together goal in mind. It was just, it's just where it broke us all back down to.
Mm. Do you perceive that breaking down was purposeful?
Yes. I could see that's exactly why we were attracted to each other.
Can you break that apart? What would be could you say now that my infidelity was the best thing that ever happened to me?
I would say that I would do it again. I would do it all over again. I would hit rewind and press play to get what we've gotten out of this.
And what has that been? What have you let go of or disintegrated by resolve of this circumstance? And what have you gained that you wouldn't give up in order to not have that experience?
We have let go of the bright and shiny view we had of each other. That is gone. That went with that day that infidelity was shared, and we have seen each other for what we really are, and we have now come back together again knowing both the wonderful and amazing qualities that we are so attracted to from each other, and then also the opposite of, and knowing and trusting in each other that we've got responsibility, self-responsibility for those qualities. And that makes our relationship so much wider, you know. And we also know too that we can do hard together, and we can care for each other even when we hurt each other badly. And having that knowledge, knowing that, it feels so solid. It is so much more solid than what it was before, which was very much based on, Bridget, you talk about pits and pedestals a lot. It was very much based on the pedestal version of ourselves. So we've now done the pit, and we get to come to the middle, and it just feels really solid.
What did that relationship
that we can do both?
Yeah, so that relationship of having each other on a pedestal, what did that feel like? Like, you know, if that was more what it was characterized by, what was the structure of that relationship?
I'd say the word I would use for that would be predictable. So you'll act like this and I'll act like that, and won't that be great for the two of us? And so comfortable. And this is all very unconscious, but you know, he would never be the man that would do something like that. That would never be my partner. My partner would never cheat and lie and behave in that way. And he's, you know, he wouldn't get depressed and not say anything. And I'm sure his would have been, if I was honest with her, she would never leave my side. She wouldn't need space and boundaries and separations to feel safe again. She would be very loyal and very understanding, and quite.
So both of you kind of flinging illusions onto each other of like the perfect person or the ever spacious person.
Yeah, but while having no idea we're doing it. We've got no clue that we're doing that with each other, but it is a very predictable and safe dynamic. Because we're probably only really sharing the really great parts of ourselves. I mean, we'd never gone anywhere this horrible together before. It had never happened. And I mean, we're talking about infidelity here, but you could be talking about anything. You could be talking about the loss of a child, or mental illness or disability or anything outside the ideal of, you know, the perfect couple and the perfect life and the perfect fairy tale ending. Yeah.
There's a deeper meeting of each other when it gets hard, that you don't.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it, a deeper meeting of each other. It's like an endurance. It's like you looking across at each other and being like, Jesus Christ, I didn't know we had this in us. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Because what I witness in couples who have gone through infidelity is given our modern age and how so much is now traceable and can be found on indiscretions, there's a huge desire now to know everything, to have all of the interactions, to know exactly what has happened. So I need to look at all your Facebook messages and emails and bank records, and I need all of the information. And every time I hear a piece of those, it's like another atomic bomb in my body, right? It's like, poof, poof, the more I'm finding, and yet I cannot get off the addiction of needing to know more. I have to know, did she fuck better than me? Did she, like, whatever your context is of your particular experience, what do you say to that person who's like, I have to know all of the details, and the person who's made the infidelity says, I think it's better I don't share them with you. It's better you don't know.
Yeah, I remember the phase. I remember how much room it took up in my brain. I remember how much I needed to know. It is like an addiction. I think it's better described as your brain trying to keep you safe. It's like being bitten by a snake and then you having to walk through the same patch of bush again and tell your brain, oh, don't worry, it won't happen. Like, you will be hyper vigilant about where on earth you're going to be bombarded with this painful, awful experience again, that your brain wants to make sure you've got all the information so that you're not going to be caught by surprise. And for the person who has done the betraying, it's just as exhausting for them, because they are having to witness hurting their partner again and again and again with these little shreds of information. And I can completely understand trying to balance the two of, should I even be saying anything more if this is so hurtful? The conversation I had with my partner is, this is the price that you have to pay. You chose to be dishonest and lie, and the cost is that you have to catch up to my hurt. This is the depths of it. I will ask as many questions as I need to ask until I feel safe again. Or I have had enough. I have exhausted myself, and I don't want to pick up that phase of this anymore. Because at some point you stop wanting to hurt yourself with it too. And it's just the big, broad topic of ouch, and you get it, and then you just leave it behind you.
Was that hard for your partner to, I don't know, swallow that, move with that, however you would describe it?
So hard for him, because one of his top values was being a good partner. Like, it seems, you know, ridiculous based on his behavior, but one of his top values was to be a wonderful, caring and loving partner, and to slow that part down to the speed that I wanted it at, which was little bits of information piece by piece and lots of questioning and asking while he's in the middle of a day and he might be doing really well, and I've seen a movie or I've had a thought or I've had a shower and my brain's gone, geez, do you remember that day all those months ago and he kind of went around the corner? Do you think that maybe, like, it becomes this overactive obsession for information. And yeah, it is incredibly hard for them, but it's also incredibly hard for you, and you don't have a lot of empathy at that point. So
do you think it's better
that it is
or not know?
Yes. At the very beginning, you will beg them and plead and try and ask them why on earth they told you at all, because all you want is to go back to the beginning. You can't believe that they couldn't just keep it to themselves, because if you didn't know, then you didn't know, and you would have continued to have the life you had earlier in the week, and you will desperately try and claw to get back there, and you can't. And then that then gives way. It's like denial, those stages of grief we talked about, goes from denial, and then you'll go into quite an obsessive stage of just wanting to know all the information, and it's just emotional whiplash all the time between the two of you.
Emotional whiplash, I think, describes that perfectly. What would be your suggestions for couples who find themselves in that obsessive or emotional whiplashing state, but the partner who has betrayed the other partner doesn't want to share further details?
I think if you have a partner that doesn't want to anymore, it just puts the brakes on. Really what they're saying is that your hurt is too much for me here. And that might be the case for a short amount of time, but if that break can't come off, if you both can't really look at what has happened, there's not a lot of hope. For my personal experience, for what I was needing, if he had said, oh no, look, this is just too awful and I've decided not to tell you anymore, that would have put a halt to any kind of progress for me personally.
How do you move from you've shattered everything I thought was true and blown apart all of the years that have built our trust into trust and trusting you again?
I didn't know what that would look like. I was asked that question. He's wanting a roadmap of what he could possibly do to make it better or for us to have a future together. And for quite a long period of time, I didn't know. And I got very good advice that I didn't need to know, and that I didn't need to have a time frame for that knowledge or be on someone's schedule. And socially, you do get a lot of pressure for an update. Like, what are you? What are you not? What's the plan? What are you guys doing? So just being able to slow that part right down until you actually know what that looks like. And for me personally, it definitely wasn't, I promise I won't do it again. That didn't mean shit. Like that meant nothing. But what did start to mean something, like tiny grains of sand, were him being accountable for all the events and him working with others to figure out how the hell he'd gotten there and where it had all come from, and sharing that with me.
Could he explain that? Could he, because I often see that is a first question. People like, why? How did you do this? How could you do this? Do you think that partners often know?
No. And I think it would look different for every single couple.
I think that's a question, though, that we assume the wrongdoer knows why they've chosen these actions.
No idea. They have no idea. And I've had conversations with him, and he has said most men are desperately trying to get their families back, and they have no idea how everything has gotten so bad, how they have fallen so far and done the things they have done to the person that they truly love.
What do you think?
For them to say that sentence to the person that they have hurt, it means nothing.
Yeah, in fact, maybe
it's hollow.
Yeah, and maybe more hurtful not to even have a reason. How have you done this? I don't know. It seems like a cop-out, doesn't it, versus the truth?
What a dangerous kind of love declaration. It's awful.
Yeah. How do you reconcile that and move beyond it?
That's him saying, And this is part of our relationship now. This is the broader part, it's better. And there's other bits that are worse than it was before because it's bigger. The worse bits are him saying, oh, yeah, I had a really stressful day at work today. I got a bit triggered by some comments from some of the dynamics at work, and I felt like maybe wanting to do something along those lines again, because when I do, I feel validated. And for a short period of time, I get my confidence back. Like, it's to sit across from your partner and hear that. But the rest of the sentence goes, but I called you, or I called a friend, or I recognized it in the moment. And that is something that I'm going to need to work with someone this week with. It's the recognition and awareness and planning around what I'd almost call an addiction. It's the behavior patterns, destructive behavior patterns in relationship that you start to treat like an addiction, and you give them the respect that they deserve.
You give the person the respect, do you mean?
Nope, you give the addiction the respect it deserves.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So it is not isn't it great we've moved past this and we'll start our new life? Like that, those themes aren't suddenly dissolved overnight just because you've gotten back together. That is his stuff. It's not my responsibility. My stuff is my stuff and that's mine. But we're now supporting each other with those dynamics. And our love is conditional. He knows what my conditions are. If he has chosen not to call me, if he has chosen to still go forward with destructive behaviors that would ruin our relationship when he knows he has support around him, we are not together. Those are my conditions. I don't care how hard the conversations are, but please ask for help, and ask for help from the people around you. Do not proceed with the behavior, because that's where my boundary is.
That's really big.
It is really big. And it's, again, you can't fit that on a Hallmark card for Valentine's Day. Like it's, it's a little wordy, but that's what we look like now. And it's not as bright as shiny as it was before. It's not. It's got a bit of shit around the back that, but it's real.
And what I hear from you is that it's deeper, wider, and you have a greater level of solidness that you now realize didn't exist before.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know what each other's addictions are. We know what each other's destructive behaviors are, and we all have them. Every single person has fantastic, amazing qualities, and then others that are just not great at all. And we're capable of dipping into them at any point in our lifetimes.
Would you say that this is a more unconditional love?
It sounds more unconditional. It feels conditional to me. It's both. It holds both. Unconditional, I am accepting, and our love is broader than what it was before. You're allowed to now have light and dark parts, but the conditions, we now have conditions too. So we're holding both.
I really love that. I actually think I wonder what you think perhaps is the better way to phrase that. Around when you were talking initially, you were talking, part of what you said was, we had these conditions, if you want to call them that were sort of said out loud and were known, and then we had the silent ones that our partner maybe didn't know about, that we'd constructed in our own head. Now, would you say the rules of your relationship or the rules of your engagement are based on some very clear boundaries, maybe conditions, boundaries could be another word for, that there's nothing unsaid, they're very clear. We both agree to entering this relationship with these parameters.
Yeah, and he has them for me too. I've got my own. He has his own for me. Yeah. There's no podium with me higher up than he is. We're both on the same level. And if I behaved in a way that was against his boundaries, and the same conditions, I was not asking for support and I was not prioritizing getting care for myself, I would expect him to separate from me.
It sounds like you both hold each other to higher versions of yourselves in terms of how you're accountable to your best self and how you're each accountable to each other growing, while having to have a broader view of the depths of your humanity, which is where I was going with the unconditional love, right? Like conditional love being, I'll love you when you support me, continue to behave how I think you need to behave in the role that I've constructed for you or that we've constructed together unconsciously.
Yeah.
Versus you now having to practice loving someone as they flounder sometimes.
Yeah.
And screw up.
Yep. Yeah. It's like having a manual for your best self and a manual for your worst self. And you've got a copy of the two, but now they do as well. And so they can tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, have you noticed this kind of cropping up? Have you got eyes on this? And they'll go, oh, yeah, actually, you make a good point. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah.
Would you advise that couples just have this conversation out loud in terms of what actually are the rules of our relationship? What classifies infidelity? What are we saying is okay in our relationship?
Yes.
How would you?
Yes, because the style of infidelity that occurred in our relationship came as quite a surprise for him, that he didn't think it was that bad. So his idea of infidelity and my idea of infidelity were quite different. And I wish we had had that conversation a lot earlier on. Like, if people are listening and heading into a lovely evening with their partner, please have this conversation. Please ask, just what does that mean for you both? What does infidelity mean for you both? What are the conditions of your love? Yeah.
How did you take yourself off of the pedestal? Because like that story that you were talking about, the intoxicating storyline of what he's done to me, it's very easy to then pedestal yourself or become angelic in the view of the view that our culture and our world would largely hold to, which would be, he's a fucking asshole, you should leave. You're too good for him.
Yeah.
How could he possibly? He doesn't know how good he's got it, blah, blah, blah. All of the narratives in our culture that fully support he's done wrong, boom, it's over, you should leave, you're better than him. How did you navigate, one, through that, and two, humble yourself so greatly that you can totally say we're on the same level? I don't perceive that I have behaved or behave better or worse than him, that we're here. I'm accountable for these things in the same way that he is accountable to these things, and they're not better or worse. Like that I find fascinating.
Oh, I don't even know if I can explain it. It's just a process that we both went through, and I just saw myself. It's just work too, you know. If you're doing therapy or coaching or you're having conversations with people, human beings just themselves are so much broader, and their behavior is so much bigger than what we'd like to acknowledge. Like, we're all capable of really horrible behavior. I don't know. It's quite hard to answer.
I ask it to you this way. How did you not put yourself in the I'm so good and he's so bad, I'm the angel and he's the devil?
I did put myself there. I spent weeks there, months there.
What is
and that's you.
Yeah. So when you're playing that role, what is the narrative that goes along with that?
That's you, you know, sitting at a barbecue and everyone's like, oh, yeah, like you're saying, he's such an asshole. Like you're so much, you don't deserve that. And you're just sitting there like, no, of course I don't. I don't deserve that. But we're two people in relationship together. It's like you can't dance by yourself. You're both doing it, and you've both actually been doing it together for a long time. That's what relationship is. So although I did spend some time there, he just kept inviting me back into the dance of accountability. That's the only way I can really, really put it. I think that trying to recover from infidelity, if you had a partner who was just not on board with being accountable in any way, and he wasn't good at it at the beginning. This was a skill that he had to learn, and a knowing that he had to slowly come to, just like I did. We're not like profound gurus on a mountain, and we just did this in a really amazing way from the beginning. It was slow. This took 9 months for us to pick apart and figure out. And some dates we did it really, really badly. But most of the time, we just tried our very best. And we did that for our children. I'm very thankful that we had our children at our feet, because our behavior had to be at a level, they're small and they're listening and they're watching, and they were just the buffer point for us to treat each other like the mother and father for our kids. We had to do it at least at that level with them and for them in their own home. And from there, we just slowly found our feet.
What was it about him holding, when you say he held you to accountability, what does that mean? What does that look like?
That looks like him not just leaving, like just packing his bags and being like, Jesus Christ, she's asking for a lot of extra work. I could definitely repartner with someone who doesn't require all of this. She's holding up a lot of mirrors here, and she's asking for a lot. These are hard conversations. Him just being in that separate room and choosing to come home and be there, even when being around me was really hard. And just, that was accountability for me. Him being in an environment that wasn't very welcoming for him for a very long time. I actually don't know if I would have had the stamina to sleep in a separate room in a family home where the other partner didn't want me there for quite a large amount of time. I'm incredibly impressed that he was able to do that, because he did it alone. Just like I was doing my part alone. But for me, that is what accountability looked like. That's the base level. And then from there, it's sharing conversations that he's having with counselors. It's having conversations with me about, like, when I behave like this in this way, what did that mean to you? Like, please explain to me why that hurt you the way that it did. And then me having the same conversation back, where he goes, but you did this, and you did this 4 years ago. I've always felt pressure from you because of this thing that you do. And me going, I've never thought about that. And then having to go away and come back and go, you're right. I did put pressure on you for that. And I don't know why I did it. I'm going to talk about that with someone. It's not great. We've both not been great sometimes. It all starts to make sense how you get where you get with infidelity. It starts to pull all the puzzle pieces together and go, of course, this was always going to be a big something. We were always going to drop this vase into a million pieces. And it, when we're talking about addiction, that could have been gambling, that could have been drinking, it could have been all sorts of things, but it was in a bit of a pressure cooker without us realizing it, being stuck in these roles, these great versions of each other. And yeah, so when you look at infidelity like that, you will hit rewind and do it again if you had to, because it catapulted us out of what we were, and we've gotten such a more loving and more hurtful version of love for ourselves.
Mm. Love is both, I think. So I just
love is both.
I just want to return to the conversation where you were talking about the snake in the bush and being on guard and vigilant, and how to begin trusting again, or how to move beyond the hurt. And, you know, as you said, never receive exactly the right panacea in words from them that you think you need. How do you let go of that need for that exactly right thing, and you keep like, they're not giving it to me, they've shattered all of this trust?
You give it to yourself.
What does that look like? You
give it to yourself. It looks like finding that little child version of yourself that needs that sentence. Oh, it's going to make me cry. And sitting with them and saying, I'm so sorry I have ignored you for so long. And I've been trying to listen to the sentence from somebody else. Tell me again what you need. When you learn to care and love yourself the way that you're desperately trying to find that in a different person, in a partner, that is incredible. When you know that you can do that for yourself, you actually don't need partnership the way that you did before, and it becomes so much safer for both of you. So that's how you do it.
What advice would you have for someone who's right now going, I cannot trust a word that comes out of their mouth. I can't even open up to them?
Start with yourself first. Trust yourself. Yeah. Go and find the bits. Write a list. Like when you are that hurt and angry and you're like, you fucker, how could you? Write the list of how could you hurt me like this? And that's where all your answers will be. All those parts that they have let you down in, you've let down yourself. That's your own list. You tried to find someone to fill that list up for you, to reassure you and to love you in the ways that you haven't been doing for yourself. Wow. When you have that list sorted for yourself, when you can tick that off by yourself, that takes all the pressure off your partner. You can still ask them for help in those areas, and you can still say, hey, look, this is my list. If you can throw me some bones with this, this would be great. This would really make me feel amazing and safe and settled. But if you're having a busy week, I can do this too. I can do this for myself.
It's amazing. I love that advice.
Yeah.
So can you share the end of your story? So you've moved through hurt and pain. At what point do you come back together? And what does that look like?
It looks like that we have individually made a lot of progress. We're having conversations together that we have never really had before. They are amazing, deep, incredible conversations. We don't hold back because we're not together. Like there's nothing to lose, no cards on the table. So they're robust and they're funny and they make us yell and laugh, and it's getting a little bit more playful. I'm feeling a bit worried. I can feel that I'm starting to lose these boundaries that I have been holding on to so tightly. I can feel him starting to have an effect on them. And I'm worried. I'm a bit scared that I'm getting, my hands are getting looser and looser. And so I feel it. I feel it start to shift. And he sits me down one day. It's just a normal co-parenting day in our COVID household we're sharing. And he says to me, I will be taking down the walls of this bedroom that I've built in this home today. I will be taking it down. You might feel all sorts of feelings about that. And I will give you the space and time you need to feel those feelings. And I can talk to you about those if you would like to, but they're coming down. That's what's happening. And I will be moving on to this new part of the property. I'm going to be moving into this new space. It's what I want for myself. And I'm ready now to start this independent part away away from you guys and start to really think about a future, you know, beyond this part we've done together. We've got to move on to a next step. And I go, oh, yes, okay, right, sure, all good. And he starts to take down this bedroom, and it takes, you know, a few hours. And I am feeling all the feelings. I'm suddenly feeling, am I making the right decision? Should I be saying something? Is he maybe feeling the same way? Is that even the right way to be feeling? It's getting all muddled and confused. We have a huge fight about the dishwasher. I really dig my heels on, and I get really stubborn about this thing about the dishwasher. And he yells at me. He yells, and he's this person that he's never been before. He's very sure of himself. He is kind but firm. It is a no from him. I haven't seen this side of him before, and I start to cry. I just cry and cry and cry. And of course, we're not yelling about the dishwasher, and we're not crying about the dishwasher. It's just that end. It's the end point. It's the transition. It's a lot like birth. And he grabs me for the first time in 9 months. He holds me while I'm crying, and he says, I am all in. Are you all in too? And yeah, I just cry, and I just let it all go. I let my defenses go, and my boundaries go, and my you might hurt me's go. I just finally give it all away. And our children come running in, and they're cuddling us, and it's very beautiful. And we had worked so hard, and it was such a long marathon of a race. But yeah, that is how it ends. And then starts, you know, we start to build something together that's brand new again. So yeah, that's how it ended.
What does that feel like to build something brand new again with the person that you've known for 16 years?
It's bizarre. It's like dating again with the person you've had children with and washed their laundry for 16 years. It's very weird. You're falling in love again. You're excited about the future. You've got this new appreciation and love for this thing that you almost lost. Like it's incredible. This is the prize at the end for not leaving, for not repartnering and repeating. And this is all the accountability. This is all the therapy sessions. This is all the asking for help. And this is what you get at the end.
Mm.
Yeah.
And can we share your news of what is happening next week?
Yes, you may.
Do you want to share?
Yeah, I'm getting married.
To this man?
To this man. I'm getting married, which was just, yeah, it was just this point we could never get to together, you know? It took this for us to go, oh my God, that was close. Oh, that was close. And we love each other so much. And God, we're a good team. We're a good team, and we can do a lot together. We can do it really good, and we can do it really hard. And I want to be married to you.
So it's like this, I really choose you because I really see you.
Yeah. We're going to do a lot together. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you feel now that you've been through this enormous experience, and when we're talking about relationship taboos, I think in our culture there's rarely one as big as this, as infidelity has created a better, stronger relationship rather than the opposite. And you come to marrying this person, do the vows and the commitments that you make to loving this person look different to what they would have looked like with your naive self who said yes to marriage 20 years ago, let's say?
Yeah, they would. They would. We're going to look at each other differently. We know. We don't even need vows. You know, we know exactly what we're promising to each other.
Mm.
Mm.
What wisdom do you feel is unsaid or that you would like to impart for any listener who finds themselves in the throes of any part of the experience of infidelity to healing and a deeper relationship? Well, one, I just want to let you know that's totally possible, but any wisdom that you would like to share?
I think the most important thing that you can do is be kind to yourself. Be kind and be gentle and go slowly. Do not rush things. Do not try and set yourself to a speed to help others understand what you are or should be or how could you, and have you considered. Just slow down, go gently. Be very kind with yourself. This is hard. This is really, really hard. And ask for help. Get lots and lots and lots of help.
What do you think is
all the greats have gotten there because of lots of help?
100% true. No one gets anywhere alone.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think it means get help for people? Like, what does that look like when you say get help, get support? What would you consider the most constructive sources for that?
Help looks different for everybody. But you know how we talked about having that conversation with your partner and just sitting on the bed and saying, what does infidelity look like for you? Make a list for what does help look like for you, and do it when you're not in distress. You know, write a survival list for yourself that you can read back to yourself when you're in distress, or you can pass to others. Help to me looks like this, knowing what that is. And then if there's things on that list that you can't do very well for yourself now, put the work in. Put the work in to get that up to scratch so that you're not, it's like a survival kit. You don't want to be grabbing in the back corner and thinking, I don't even know how to use this, or it's so rusty that I've forgotten how to do it. And, you know, we're talking about things like eating well and sleeping well and saying no when you've had too much and you need rest and you need time to just be quiet. It's those basics. Like, what do they look like for you? What does rest really look like for you? For some people, that's physically resting, and for others, that's going out in nature, and for others, that might be getting into meditation. Like, what does it look like for you? And put that together before you need it. Yeah.
It's really beautiful advice. Is there anything that's left unasked for you, Bridgie?
No, I just really wanted to thank you so much for so openly sharing what you've traversed and just the richness of your willingness to stay in the hard stuff. Like, that takes such courage, I think. And I really hope that our listeners have really felt that too, and you know, felt into what you've been able to gain on the other side of that, you know, on the other side of looking in that mirror.
Yeah, I had a wonderful, and luckily do still have, a very wonderful mother that made sure that we could do the hard stuff. We had an amazing childhood with her, but we also had it hard too. And I'm thankful every day that she gave us some grit and some strength, and that foundation I talked about at the beginning. She made sure we had that for ourselves. And yeah, I'm forever grateful. So that's definitely continued on in my parenting with my children.
I was going to say, how does that inform your parenting?
Yeah, it does. It does inform my parenting. Like, it is important for my children to love well and hurt well. I want them to be able to do both. I want them to both achieve great, successful things and also struggle and not do well, and help them and guide them in not doing well.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
So you're coming to Soul Driven Motherhood to do an extended and deeper conversation with the women in the week's release of this podcast. So anyone who is in Soul Driven Motherhood can look forward to seeing you there. But before we move into our quick fire questions, we'd love for you to share how people can connect with you and seek out conversations and services with you.
Yeah, so there's a website and it's called heartbreaknt.com. So if you head there, you can just contact me from there and we can start conversations together. I just want it to be a really empathetic and supportive space for women to share whatever their story of infidelity looks like for them. And there's no right or wrong way. There's no guidebook or way to do it properly, but I just wanted to be there to support people with wherever they're at. So if listening to this has hit a chord and you've got maybe a really old hurt about infidelity that you would like to keep moving through, or if you're right in the guts of the shock of infidelity, I would really love to connect with women to help them along the way.
Thank you for that beautiful invitation. So question number one of our quickfire questions is, can you share a time in your life where you've experienced a wound and transformed it into wisdom? Would it be this or something
I think we covered it.
Okay.
I think we covered it really well. That's been my biggest whack to the head so far. I heard it loud and clear. I hope I did it well. I don't need any more in the near future. So, and this is what supporting women is about too for me, is I want to go, yep, I got it. I want to throw out some ropes for the people behind me, and no more wax. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, can I ask you just a question on that? How would you share your wisdom from this experience with your children?
We actually involved our children quite early on. So we have a daughter who's 9 and a son who's 4. I think the 4-year-old, it just really went right over his head. But our 9-year-old daughter was very much involved with the conversations that were appropriate for her and knew that we were separating and got to see what that looked like. She got to see the modeling of 2 adults who were hurt and hurting and that still look okay. So, yeah, that is what that looked like.
Thank you. Do you want to ask?
Yeah. So the books that you feel, book or books that you feel everyone should read in their lifetime, perhaps that's been most influential to you, what would you suggest?
So it's one book and I try to give it to as many people as I can, and it's called Parenting for a Peaceful World, and it's by Robin Grill.
Oh,
it's an odd one. So it's like a history book and a parenting book smushed together. So it goes right to the beginning, really, of the human experience of parenting right through all the ages. If you want a lesson on empathy of why people parented the way they did, and then why those children then had the adulthoods they had, this is the book. I feel every human being should read that book to understand why we behave the way we do. And
that sounds fascinating.
Really, the limitations of each generation too. We've all got a bit of a bandwidth of how much we can stretch, and the way that I parent is nothing like the way that generations before me parented, but we did not have the same world around us. And reading that book, I just got a lot of empathy for parents of each generation and the ripple effect that's had.
Thank you. And if you could have a billboard anywhere on a superhighway, what would it say?
It would say, how safe are you for yourself? I want everyone in a car to look up and think, how safe am I for myself? And to really think about what that means. So that means in times of distress or anger or shock or betrayal or how do you care for yourself in those times when it's all going terribly wrong? How safe are you to yourself?
That is powerful.
It really is.
Thank you once again. You are just an absolute marvel, and we're so, so grateful to have you and your wisdom and your soulful self show up so fully and completely here. It's a real gift to this space and to all of the women or men that listen to this podcast. So I really want to...
Yeah, all men too. All men as well. It's not a female story. It's a human story. So, yeah, everyone.
Totally. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So,
You're welcome.
yes, to connect with you, Jules,
Is julietenner.love, and you, Bridge?
it's bridgetwood.life. To connect with us, it's nourishingthemother.com.au. And remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
Thank you so much for listening. We literally couldn't do this without you. Please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively into your life, then head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper.
And if you feel like giving back a little to this free content, please rate us on iTunes or Facebook, all of which helps the podcast reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.